In 1985, if you wanted the latest vinyl, a new school uniform, or a tea under one massive roof, where did you go? For millions of people across Britain, department stores weren't just places to shop. They were the heartbeat of every town centre. But within a few short years, key executives were ousted, iconic buildings were demolished, and multi-million-pound empires vanished completely. So how did Britain's most beloved retail giants go from towering high street icons to total ghosts? Before shopping malls existed, there was Lewis's. Founded in Liverpool, this wasn't just a shop, it was an absolute palace for working-class families. During the 1980s, walking into a Lewis's store felt like stepping into the future. They were famous for introducing Britain's first floor-to-floor escalators, hosting massive Christmas grottos, and even opening the world's first rooftop garden on a department store. For decades, Lewis's held an absolute monopoly on city centre fashion and home goods. But as the 1980s progressed, a quiet problem began to brew. Modern retail chains started offering cheaper, faster fashion. While competitors adapted, Lewis's stayed rigid, holding on to giant, expensive city centre buildings with massive overhead costs. When the recession hit at the end of the decade, the heavy debts became unbearable. Store after store began to lose money. By the early 1990s, the company fell into administration. The giant that literally invented the modern British shopping experience was broken up and sold for parts. But if you think Lewis's falling apart was a shock, wait until you hear what happened to the store that practically owned every middle-class living room in Britain. If Lewis's was for the grand city centres, Owen Owen was the king of the market towns. Starting as a small drapery shop in Utica, Wales, Owen Owen grew into a powerhouse with over 20 massive department stores across Britain by the mid-1980s. They specialized in high-quality furniture, classic clothing, and personalized customer service that made every shopper feel like royalty. Their secret weapon was simple: build personal trust, offer reliable goods, and dominate medium-sized towns where big London chains wouldn't go. For decades, it worked flawlessly. However, the late 1980s brought a radical change in how people spent money. Out-of-town retail parks started popping up everywhere, offering free parking and giant superstores. Owen Owen stayed stuck in congested town centres. To make matters worse, young shoppers started viewing Owen Owen as a place only their grandparents shopped. Instead of rebranding to attract younger buyers, management bought out rival chains, doubling down on an outdated business model. The debt piled up fast. By the late 1990s, store sales plummeted, forcing the family empire to sell off its locations one by one until the brand vanished completely from the high street. You cannot talk about 80s British fashion without talking about C&A. Known for its iconic clockhouse brand, C&A was the ultimate destination for affordable, trend-setting clothes. If you wanted to look fashionable on a tight budget in 1985, this was the only store that mattered. At its peak, C&A operated over 200 stores across the UK. They dominated the market using a simple rule of three: aggressive pricing, massive store layouts, and rapid stock rotation. They were so dominant that competitors openly admitted they couldn't match C&A's manufacturing scale. So, how did a powerhouse with hundreds of packed stores go completely broke in Britain? It started with a brutal double blow. New fast fashion giants like Primark and Zara entered the market, offering even cheaper clothes with much faster turnaround times. At the same time, supermarket chains like Tesco and Asda started selling their own dirt-cheap clothing lines. C&A was caught right in the middle, neither cheap enough to beat Primark nor trendy enough to compete with Topshop. In 2000, C&A made a shocking announcement that stunned the retail world. They were closing all 113 of their remaining UK stores, wiping out thousands of jobs in a single move. Out of every store on this list, British Home Stores was perhaps the most deeply woven into daily British life. Founded in 1928, BHS was famous for three things: legendary lighting departments, high-quality school uniforms, and bustling floor cafes that served millions of breakfasts every year. Throughout the 1980s, BHS was a money-making machine. It was reliable, familiar, and trusted by families across the entire country. But behind the scenes, a disaster was slowly unfolding. As consumer tastes shifted towards sleek, modern shopping experiences in the 1990s and 2000s, BHS failed to update its identity. The stores became dark, outdated, and cluttered, while rival brands invested heavily in online websites and fresh store layouts. BHS leadership ignored the digital revolution entirely. The final blow came down to financial mismanagement. A massive black hole opened up in the company's pension scheme, leaving thousands of loyal workers at risk. In 2016, after decades of slow decay, BHS officially collapsed into administration, closing every single store and leaving giant empty shelves on high streets across the nation. Finally, we arrive at the biggest loss of them all. Woolworths, or Woolies, wasn't just a department store, it was a national treasure. Whether you were buying pick-and-mix sweets, the latest top 40 chart singles on vinyl, or plastic garden furniture, Woolworths had literally everything under one roof. By the late 1980s, Woolworths had over 800 stores across the UK. It was the undisputed cornerstone of British retail. So how did an empire with over 800 locations go from peak profit to total bankruptcy? The collapse came down to a fatal identity crisis. Woolworths tried to sell everything to everyone, which meant it specialized in nothing. When grocery supermarkets began selling cheap CDs, toys, and household goods, Woolworths lost its core customer base. Simultaneously, online retailers like Amazon started taking over music and entertainment sales. In late 2008, during the global financial crisis, the company's massive debt burden finally caught up with them. Woolworths owed hundreds of millions of pounds, and banks refused to lend them any more cash. In a matter of weeks, all 807 stores were forced to shut their doors forever. Over 27,000 people lost their jobs, marking the single largest retail collapse in British history, and officially ending the golden age of the British High Street. Which of these classic department stores do you miss walking through the most? Let me know in the comments below. If this nostalgic deep dive brought back memories of the golden age of the High Street, smash that like button to help more people discover the video, and don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next trip through history. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.